Good morning, or good afternoon, everyone. As promised, I'm going to continue to keep you apprised of new developments. Some significant developments, I think, occurred over the course of the last few days with information that was brought to my attention. And I'm going to just sort of read a very brief statement, and that's about all I can tell you, but I want to keep you fully informed of what's happening. At our open hearing on Monday, I encouraged anyone who has information about relative topics, including surveillance on President-elect Trump or his transition team, to come forward and speak to the House Intelligence Committee. I also said that while there was not a physical wiretap of Trump Tower, I was concerned that other surveillance activities were used against President Trump and his associates. So first, I recently confirmed that on numerous occasions the intelligence community incidentally collected information about U.S. citizens involved in the Trump transition. Details about U.S. persons associated with the incoming administration, details with little or no apparent foreign intelligence value, were widely disseminated in intelligence community reporting. Third, I have confirmed that additional names of Trump transition team members were unmasked. And fourth and finally, I want to be clear, none of this surveillance was related to Russia or the investigation of Russian activities or of the Trump team. The House Intelligence Committee will thoroughly investigate surveillance and its subsequent dissemination to determine a few things here that I want to read off. Who was aware of it, why it was not disclosed to Congress, who requested and authorized the additional unmasking, whether anyone directed the intelligence community to focus on Trump associates, and whether any laws, regulations, or procedures were violated. I've asked the directors of FBI, NSA, and CIA to expeditiously comply with my March 15th letter that you all received a couple weeks ago, and to provide a full account of these surveillance activities. I informed Speaker Ryan this morning of this new information, and I will be going to the White House this afternoon to share what I know with the President and his team. Before I get to questions, I want to say that, as you know, there's just been what appears to be a terrorist attack in the United Kingdom. Obviously very concerned, and our thoughts and prayers go out to our strong friends and allies over across the pond. And with that, I'll open it up to questions.
Mr. Nunes, was any of this, these communications picked up at Trump Tower?
We don't know that yet. That's why we need to get the information. I will say this. The NSA has been very, very helpful. They know how important these programs are. They are in constant communication with our team. And as you know, they partially complied with our request last week, and I expect them to hopefully get us more information by Friday. And I have spoke to Admiral Rogers about these concerns, and he wants to comply as quickly as he can.
And was the President also part of that incidental collection, his communications?
Yes.
They were?
Yes.
So wait, excuse me, let me just clarify. The President of the United States' personal communications were intercepted as an incidental.
No, I think we have to, I think what we have to, it's very, when we talk about intelligence products here, we've got to be very careful. From what I know right now, it looks like incidental collection. We don't know exactly how that was picked up, but we're trying to get to the bottom of it.
The President of the United States' personal communications were collected in incidental collection, not in specific targeted collection.
It's possible. We won't know until we get the information on Friday, and that's why. Look, I think the NSA is going to comply. I am concerned. Yet we don't know whether or not the FBI is going to comply. And I've placed a call. I'm waiting to hopefully talk to Director Comey. Yet we don't know whether or not the FBI is going to comply. And I've placed a call. I'm waiting to hopefully talk to Director Comey later today.
But Mr. Jackson, can you just clarify? Yes.
Hold on. Let me go here.
Are you concerned that any of the surveillance was done illegally, or it was incidental but a legal?
That's a great. Yeah, that's a really good question. So, I believe it was all done legally. I think it was all obtained legally. I think the question is was it masked? Why was it unmasked if it was unmasked? Because it appears like we have new information about additional unmaskings. And then who was on the dissemination list, and why was the dissemination list so far if it was such specific information about the Trump transition? And it appears, and just to give you one piece of information I think might be helpful, it appears most of this occurred, from what I've seen, in November, December, and January. So that should probably, during the transition, that's correct.
But sir, I'm sorry, can you please clarify, because you said that the president's communications were incidentally collected, but then you said it's also possible. So was it collected, or is it possible that it was collected?
I just don't know the answer to that yet.
So you don't know if the president's communications
I know there was incidental collection regarding the president-elect and his team. I don't know if it was actually physically a phone call.
And you don't know if it was the president himself, his communication?
I do not know that.
Mr. Chairman, was the president's conversations or anything about the president appearing in intelligence reports? Is that what you're saying?
I have seen intelligence reports that clearly show that the president-elect and his team were, I guess, at least monitored and disseminated out in intelligence, and what appears to be raw, or I shouldn't say raw, but intelligence reporting channels. As best as I can say that until I actually get all of the information that we've requested.
Why do you have to go to the White House to brief them? Shouldn't
Please talk to the cameras.
Shouldn't the administration be briefing you?
The administration, I don't think, is aware of this, so I want to make sure that I go over there and tell them what I know, because it involves them.
Mr. Chairman, just to be clear, you said this is not related to Russia investigation.
It is,
Can you give us some better idea?
the information that I have seen has nothing to do with Russia or the Russian investigation. So, so bluntly put, everything that I was able to view did not involve Russia or any discussions with Russians or any Trump people or other Russians. So none of it has to do with Russia. That doesn't mean that doesn't exist, but we don't have it.
Can you give us a broader sense of what it was related to?
Look, a lot of it appears like it was, it looks to me like it was all legally collected, but it was essentially a lot of information on the president-elect and his transition team and what they were doing.
Was it incidental collection or direct collection?
I think it's, from what I've seen, it appears to be incidental collection. Any other questions, guys?
So what was found, just to be clear, it was the material that you have seen so far doesn't make any reference or connection to Russia, or are you saying the incidental investigations themselves more broadly were not?
Yeah, so this information was legally brought to me by sources who thought that we should know it, and it was there were no references whatsoever in everything that I read, and it was dozens. Let's leave it at that. Dozens of reports, and there was no mention of Russia.
And that's the sources brought that information to you?
That's correct.
Mr. Nunes,
I'm not going to get into the sources or when it arrived, but I wanted to brief the speaker, which is what I did this morning. And obviously, I briefed. I put in calls to the directors. I've spoken to the CIA director and the NSA director, and I'm waiting to talk to Director Comey. And I'm going to head to the White House after the votes.
This is a chance for us to ask you what might have motivated the ban or restrictions on electronics on airlines, please. Do you know what's behind that?
Yeah, I'm not going to get to I'm not. I'd just refer you to DHS for that. Okay, I'm sorry.
specifically,
Does this change? You've said repeatedly previously the president was wrong when he said he was wiretapped at Trump Tower.
Well, I've always said from day one that there wasn't a physical wiretap of Trump Tower. I still don't have any evidence to show that at all. But clearly, what I read was clearly significant information about President-elect Trump and his team, and there were additional names that were unmasked, which is why we sent that letter on the 15th.
I was going to say, is this a response to that letter that you sent on the 15th?
Well, we don't know. It was no, it was not. This was information brought to me.
I was going to say, is this a response to that letter that you sent on the 15th?
Well, we don't know. It was no, it was not. This was information brought to me by sources, and I'm hoping that NSA, FBI, CIA get me anything else that they have. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, do you plan to make this information that's come to you from the source, do you plan to make any of it available now or in the future?
You mean publicly? Well, it's all classified information. But look, we're hopeful that we're going to get the information that I've seen, plus a lot more information on Friday.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Was this surveillance for a criminal investigation or a
No. It was not. It was not. Has nothing to do with any criminal investigation. This is a normal incidental collection at least from what I was able to read.
So if it's illegal surveillance, then they have to have a basis for doing surveillance. Isn't that correct?
That's
I just wonder what kind of surveillance they were doing.
That's correct. No, it was not criminal. It was normal foreign surveillance. Is what it looks like to me. But let's wait until we get all the information.
About President Trump, but not necessarily his communications specifically.
As of right now, that's what I've seen, but it's hard to know until we get all the information and we have the time to talk to the appropriate agencies.
It was targeted at foreigners.
Yes, sir.
You said you're not confident where this incidental collection took place, and you're not confident precisely who is involved in this incidental collection.
No, because all I was able to see were reports on information that was collected.
How can you be confident then that it did not have anything to do with Russia and the Russian question?
Because I read through them and there was no mention of Russia.
Specifically, are we talking about Paul Manafort here in his communications or any other senior level Trump officials?
No. This appears to be all legally collected foreign intelligence under FISA, where there was incidental collection that then ended up in reporting channels and that was widely disseminated.
Can you say who, which individuals in particular?
Not at this time.
What is your response to this report about Paul Manafort today showing that he worked a decade ago with Russian billionaire to help advance Vladimir Putin's interests? Is this going to be part of your committee's investigation?
Well, we're going to move on. I mean, probably next week. I haven't talked to Mr. Schiff yet about the next phase. As you all know, we've asked people to come in on their own or provide us information on their own. That's clearly happening based on some information is coming into us, and then we'll move into the second stage of the investigation. At that point, we'll discuss who will bring in. It'll likely be through depositions.
So this sounds sort of like you're treating it as routine surveillance. I mean, it's incidental, but are you surprised at this discovery today?
Yeah, I mean, I am, because we went through this. I'm actually alarmed by it because we went through this about a year and a half ago as it related to members of Congress. If you may remember, there was a report, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, but then we had to have a whole series of hearings, and then we had to have changes made to how Congress is informed of if members of Congress are picked up in surveillance. And this looks like it's very similar to that. It reminds me of what happened about a year and a half ago. Hold on. Let's somebody else over here. I'm just going to share. I don't know. I mean, look. I've only, like I said, I've seen dozens of reports. I don't know if there's more than that. But clearly, I thought it was important enough for me to at least tell all of you, inform the speaker, and then I'm going to go to the White House and at least let them know what I've seen, because I think because I think they need to see it. If they don't have it, they need to see it.
What foreign country was involved in this?
I'm sorry. We've got two questions going at the same time. There's no question. It's official and IC information.
Mr. Chairman, was it from members of the intelligence community who are officially communicating to you, or was this?
Yeah, I don't want to get into this for the protections of American citizens, as you can imagine.
Which foreign country are we referring to here with regards to the legal incidental?
I'm not going to get into the exact countries.
This go to your investigation, and what do you think of Democrats' calls for an independent commission or council? Is this time for that?
No, I mean, I think we're doing our investigation. We're following the facts where they lead, and clearly I thought this was important enough to come publicly and say what I have so far. All right, guys. Okay, we have some of you guys an asked one, and I got to run for the vote. Please, who haven't asked, please.
Is there definitely none of this pre-election? Is this all during the transition period?
I don't know that, but who haven't asked, please.
Is there definitely none of this pre-election? Is this all during the transition period?
I don't know that, but what I've seen was post-election. Yes, sir.
Is it the surveillance itself that alarms you, or is it the unmasking and dissemination, or both?
All the above. I mean, I'm really bothered by the unmasking, which is why we sent that letter on the 15th, because I want to see what additional names were unmasked. And now I know that there appears like there was additional names that were unmasked.
What is it about the surveillance itself that alarms you, if that was possibly just routine incidental collection on a foreign target?
Oh, I guess from what I read, it bothers me that would have any foreign intelligence value whatsoever, and why people would need to know that about President-elect Trump or his transition team.
Just to be clear, were these communications actually collected inside Trump Tower?
We don't know. We don't know that.
And how, is there any way? How do you not know whether or not it was Trump's personal communications? I mean, wouldn't that be clear if it was his?
Because until I get all the information, in its entirety from all the agencies, that we can go through it, and then we can go back and ask those types of questions, and I would just be speculating at this point. All right, guys, I got to get.
Can you just say, do you think right now the NSA or a member of the intelligence community was spying on Trump during the transition period?
Well, yeah, I guess it all depends on definitions of spying. I mean, clearly it bothers me enough. I'm not comfortable with it, and I want to make sure that the White House understands it, and it's why I briefed the Speaker this morning on this.
But do you think he may have been spied on?
Look, I'm not going to get into legal definitions here, but clearly I have a concern. All right, guys, I got to run to the floor. Thank you so very much. Thanks. Good afternoon. I know a lot of you are not from the U.S. Congress, so I haven't had a chance to brief a lot of you in the past, but just in order to keep you all fully updated on what's happening with this investigation, today I briefed the President on the concerns that I had about incidental collection and how it relates. Briefed the President on the concerns that I had about incidental collection and how it relates to President-elect Trump and his transition team, and the concerns that I have. As I said earlier, there'll be more information, hopefully by Friday. The NSA is cooperating very, very well. And lastly, I'll say that the reports that I was able to see did not have anything to do with Russia or the Russia investigation or any tie to the Trump team. And with that, I'll love to take a couple questions if you have them.
Quick question. Why is it appropriate for you to brief President Trump, given it's his own administration or campaign associates that are a part of this investigation? Does it appear to be interference in some form?
Because what I saw has nothing to do with Russia and nothing to do with the Russia investigation, has everything to do with possible surveillance activities, and the President needs to know that these intelligence reports are out there, and I have a duty to tell him that.
Does it appear that you'd be drawing conclusions before it was completed, Chairman?
I'm not drawing any conclusion. I'm just telling the President what exists in intelligence reports.
Subjects of the surveillance under FISA orders?
It appears so. I don't want to get too much into those details, but these were intelligence reports, and it brings up a lot of concerns about whether things were properly minimized or not. But I will tell you, I've only seen some. It's in the dozens. But we don't have the full scope of all the intelligence reports that were produced, or who ordered the unmasking of additional names. And we're hoping to get that. Yes.
Are you saying the surveillance, if it wasn't related to Russia or anything like that, are you saying that it was political surveillance of political opponents, as the President has suggested in his tweets?
What I've read bothers me, and I think it should bother the President himself and his team, because I think some of it seems to be inappropriate. But like I said, until we get all the information to the committee, it's hard to really say until we see it in its totality.
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
we knew that there was some incidental collection because Lieutenant General Michael Flynn was caught up talking with Sergei Kislyak.
Right.
Does this go beyond that, and does this qualify as the sort of wiretapping that the president was tweeting about?
Well, it definitely goes beyond what happened to General Flynn. Now, of course, we don't actually know yet officially what happened to General Flynn. We just know that his name leaked out, but we don't know how it was picked up yet. That's one of the things that we asked for in our March 15th letter, was for the NSA, CIA, and FBI to get us all the unmasking that was done. And I'll tell you, NSA is being cooperative, but so far the FBI has not told us whether or not they're going to respond to our March 15th letter, which is now a couple weeks old.
And again, does this seem to describe what the president was talking about when he was talking about, quote, wiretapping, which they then said was broader surveillance?
What I've read seems to me to be some level of surveillance activity, perhaps legal, but I don't know that it's right, and I don't know that the American people would be comfortable with what I've read. But let us get all the reports in any time.
Does this suggest the president was correct in what he tweeted?
It is possible.
Chairman, the president said that President Obama tapped his phones.
No. That did not happen. I've said this for many weeks, including the day after, a couple days after, in front of the press. That never happened. So that never happened.
Did President Obama order any kind of surveillance of the president?
Well, we don't know. We don't know who sent the taskings. If the taskings were changed into what went into these intelligence reports, but we're going to try to find that out.
Permission to put out this information today. Did the Justice Department give you the okay to talk about this?
Justice Department doesn't have anything to do with this. This is information. This is information that was brought to me that I thought the president needed to know about incidental collection, where the president himself and others in the Trump transition team were clearly put into intelligence reports that ended up at this White House and across a whole bunch of other agencies. And I thought it was important for the president to know this. That's why I briefed the speaker this morning, and I came down here as soon as I could. Why I briefed the speaker this morning, and I came down here as soon as I could.
How many people are you seeing in these reports, and do any of them currently work at the White House for Mr. Trump?
Yeah, well, I don't want to get into the specifics of it because, look, I was only able to see a few dozen, of which I think a lot of it does have foreign intelligence value. So let's not. There were dozens of reports that I was able to see that we're hoping that the NSA, FBI, CIA will provide, because I know they exist, so I want them to provide them to our committee so that all the members have an opportunity to see what I've been shown.
What did the president tell you after you briefed him about this?
I think the president is concerned, and he should be. I think he'd like to see these reports, and I'd hopefully when we get them, hopefully they'll get them to the White House also.
Do you believe the president appropriately used the word wiretapping? Was it used correctly in his tweets based on the information that you have seen?
Well, look, I think the wiretapping, if you use it generally, like the president has said, he clearly, used it differently than what I think a lot of people took it, which was, did Obama actually wiretap Trump Tower, which we know didn't happen. I think the president's been pretty clear on that.
But the physical act of wiretapping, do you see anything in the information that you...
No, and I said that on day 2 after
Can you rule out the possibility that senior Obama administration officials were involved in this?
No, we cannot.
Talk about internet. Given that you have said there was a FISA warrant which would have been approved by a judge, are you concerned that essentially you're saying members of the Trump team were in contact with people who were the target of a counterintelligence or some form of investigation?
No, I think you'd be this would be. I think you're reading too much into that. What this is normal intelligence reporting. It's just normal intelligence reporting. The question is should he himself or others, should they have been put into these reports? And I don't know the answer to that yet, but we're going to try to get to the bottom of it.
So your issue is the unmasking, not that there was this monitoring.
Well, there's 2 issues here. Okay, there's additional unmasking of names, which I think is totally inappropriate. But we have to get to the, I don't know how many names were unmasked, but I know there were additional unmaskings that occurred. And then you have the issue of the names that were put into these intelligence reports that we have to get to the bottom of, and this is why we sent the letter 2 weeks ago. We need a response to it.
Mr. Chairman, can I just clarify and ask three things? Are you suggesting that Mr. Trump's communications are in those reports, first? Second, are you saying that you're concerned enough that this would trigger a different, separate investigation? And third, why did you not discuss this with the ranking member before you came to the White House?
So yes, no, and I'm going to be meeting with Mr. Schiff at some point to talk about where we go with this investigation. But I had to brief the Speaker first, and then I had to talk to the CIA director, the NSA director, and I'm waiting to talk to the FBI director because he still has not told us how he's going to get us this information. Then I went and talked to all of you, not you yourselves, but those of you who exist over at the Congress, and then I voted, and then I said I was coming here to brief the president, and I'll be glad to talk to
clarify, Mr. Trump's communications, you believe, are in the reports that were acquired by FISA. You're concerned enough about it, but you're not calling for additional investigation.
Well, we are investigating it.
You just said no. You said no.
No, incidental. Well, because we're already investigating. We're not opening a new investigation.
But you said it has nothing to do with Russia, and you're folding this into your investigation.
Well, because it has to deal with the unmasking of names and whether or not all this was gathered properly.
So, an ongoing investigation. You thought it was appropriate to come and talk to the president about it.
Just remember, we have had an ongoing investigation into Russia for a very, very long time and all of their activities. So, we have the scoping document of the Russian investigation, and we will continue to investigate anything and everything else that might be caught up in this, because clearly we are concerned about what ends up in intelligence products, why, and whether or not there was unmasking.
Mr. Chairman, to be clear,
I'm going to have to get back to this.
was the president unmasked?
Were in fact monitored. Can you say what he was communicating about or who he was communicating with?
No, I can't get into that. I'm sorry.
You also said that somebody brought you this information very recently. Can you tell us who brought you this information?
Well, I can tell you this, that we've been asking for people to come forward, and they came through the proper channels. They had the proper clearances, and I'm just going to leave it at that, because we have to protect people who came forward in the right manner and got the information.
As an intelligence whistleblower, sir?
I'm not even going to say it's one person. People who came forward in the right manner and got the information.
As an intelligence whistleblower, sir?
I'm not even going to say it's one person.
You talk about this being collected incidentally, but you say it has nothing to do with Russia. Are you suggesting that these communications could have been collected incidentally as part of a criminal investigation, a criminal warrant?
No.
So how do you believe
no,
they were?
Because I read what I was in the dozens of reports I was able to see. I was able to determine that it looks like it was legal collection, incidental collection, that then made it itself into intelligence report. So it has to deal with FISA, and there's multiple number of FISA warrants that are out there, but there's nothing criminal at all involved. Hold on, I got to take one more question. I'm sorry.
Was it information that was looked at in real time, or was it information that was collected, held, stored, and then allowed to be looked at later when it was tapped?
It was fairly quickly from what I've seen, but we have to. Once we get the reports, then we can ask more questions of the agencies that produce the reports.
If it was legal collection, what is it that you find inappropriate about it? And are you attempting to give the president political cover for his wiretapping claim?
Because the reason that we do this, and we have all these procedures in place, is to protect American citizens who are incidentally collected. And so there's certain thresholds that have to be met to make it into foreign intelligence products. If something else happened where it appears to me like there were things that maybe they didn't meet the minimum qualifications, I don't know, but there are things to me that don't reach the level of foreign intelligence value. And if that's the case, you have to ask yourself, why did those end up in reports?
But just to clarify, this is not intentional spying on Donald Trump or anybody in his.
I have no idea. We won't know that.
Well, you said this
we won't know that until we get to the bottom of did people ask for the unmasking of additional names within President-elect's transition team.
When you said legal and incidental, that doesn't sound like a proactive effort to spy.
I would refer you to, we had a similar issue with members of Congress that were being picked up in incidental collection a little over a year ago. We had to spend a full year working with the DNI on the proper notification for members of Congress to be notified, which comes through the Gang of Eight. And I would refer you to that because it looks very, very similar to that. Would be the best way I can describe it.
Mr. President, was President Trump's name specifically unmasked? Was his name unmasked?
I'm not going to get into that, but I have every indication that it's clear who's in these reports. I'm going to have to get going, guys. I have to get and vote. Thank you.
Here he comes. Here he comes. Here he comes. Here he comes.
Well, good evening. I want to make a few comments about the chairman's statement today. First, I think it gravely concerning to the members of the committee that the chairman would receive information that is pertinent to the scope of our investigation, and instead of sharing that information with the committee, would share that information with the White House. The committee has still not received the intercepts or other information that the chairman was referring to, and therefore it is really impossible for us to evaluate any of the merits of what the chairman has said. But I can say this. The chairman will need to decide whether he is the merits of what the chairman has said. But I can say this. The chairman will need to decide whether he is the chairman of an independent investigation into conduct which includes allegations of potential coordination between the Trump campaign and the Russians, or he is going to act as a surrogate of the White House because he cannot do both. And unfortunately, I think the actions of today throw great doubt into the ability of both the chairman and the committee to conduct the investigation the way it ought to be conducted. I have expressed these grave concerns with the chairman. I only learned about this the way that all of you did when the chairman briefed the press in advance of briefing his own committee members. And that is a deep, deep problem. I think it does underscore the importance of establishing an independent commission, a body that is fully independent of any political considerations, including those that may emanate from the White House. That would certainly give me a lot of confidence that in addition to whatever work our committee does and the Senate Intelligence Committee does, that there is a truly independent body that is looking into the grave issues that have been raised. Second, with respect to the intercepts themselves that the chairman referenced, those have not been provided to the committee for our evaluation. But on the basis of what the chairman has said and on the basis of my conversation with the chairman, I can say this. There is still no evidence that the president was wiretapped by his predecessor. President Trump's claims that he was remain as baseless today as they were yesterday. And they were the day before when the directors of the FBI and NSA testified that they were made without any basis in fact. If the incident today is an indication that after making the baseless claim, the president then aggravated the damage by implicating the British in a potential plot to have the British surveil him on behalf of President Obama, and now is attempting to interfere in the congressional investigation, again with the effort of trying to provide some substance to a claim without substance, then the damage, the wrecking ball of this allegation has just claimed another victim, that being our own committee. What I understand from the chairman is that he has reviewed intercepts of foreign intelligence. And what I understand from the chairman is there's no indication that that surveillance was anything but lawful. And what people need to understand about foreign intelligence gathering and incidental collection is if we are listening to two foreign spies, for example, talking to each other on foreign soil, or two representatives of a foreign government, and they mention a U.S. person, that is incidental collection. It doesn't necessarily mean there is a call from a foreign party to a U.S. person. Even the mention of a U.S. person is incidental collection, and that name would be masked. If there is a call with a U.S. person or U.S. person identities are involved at all, those names are masked. but there are proper procedures for unmasking a name. When it is necessary for the intelligence agencies to understand the significance of the intercept, and they cannot do that when the names are masked, you can properly unmask the name. The chairman has provided no evidence that any names that were unmasked improperly. And of course, without the ability for the committee to look at the intercepts, we're not in a position to evaluate whether the procedures were followed or were not followed. Moreover, as I understand from my conversation with the chairman, most of the names in the intercepts were in fact masked, and the chairman's concern was that he could still figure out the identities of some of the parties even though the names were masked. Well, that doesn't mean that the masking was improper. And so, again, it's impossible to evaluate whether there's any there in terms of these intercepts without the committee being able to look at them, and thus far the chair has not provided this evidence to the committee. So this is deeply troubling along many levels. But among the most significant levels is it really impedes our ability to do this investigation the way we should. I've been part of investigations that were conducted properly when the House Intelligence Committee investigated Benghazi, and I've been part of investigations that were not, such as the Benghazi Select Committee. It was my hope that our investigation could be conducted properly. It's still my hope that this investigation should be conducted properly, but unfortunately the actions of the chair throw that very much in doubt, and I'd be happy to respond to your questions. Yes.
Mr. Chair, two questions. One, what is the Democrats' next step here? Are you planning on pulling out of this investigation? Two questions. One, what is the Democrats' next step here? Are you planning on pulling out of this investigation the way that you did during the Benghazi inquiry? And two, did Chairman Nunes reveal any classified information today by his disclosures to the press?
Well, on the first point, we actually stayed on the Benghazi Select Committee, though we knew from the outset that it was essentially going to be a political instrument to tear down Secretary Clinton's numbers. And, of course, we will have to analyze what this development means. I do think that if there is any chance remaining for us to conduct this investigation, we need to do it. As I said earlier in the week, we could do a tremendous service to the country if we're able to do a credible investigation and at the end of the day provide a report to the American people that has Democrats and Republicans on the same page. But if you have a chairman who is interacting with the White House and sharing information with the White House when people around the White House are the subject of the investigation and doing so before sharing it with the committee, it throws a profound doubt over whether that can be done credibly.
Did Chairman Nunes reveal any classified information today?
Well, it's certainly inappropriate for us to be discussing whether specific people were the subject of collection or incidental collection to any degree that can divulge who the targets of that surveillance may be. So I'm not prepared to say that what the chairman said was classified or unclassified. I can say that it is beyond irregular to receive any evidence that's within the scope of an investigation, and clearly if the chairman is right about the content here, it's within the scope of the issues we're looking at about whether masking procedures are followed and whether things are being leaked. And I would say that the most profound concern here I have is that these actions simply raise enormous doubt about whether the committee can do its work. And I think that more than anything else I've seen, this makes the most profound case for the formation of an independent commission.
Mr.
Yes.
But to follow up on this question, on Monday we heard quite a bit about, from several committee members, about improper unmasking of individuals who were collected in warranted surveillance. What is the fundamental difference between what the chairman did today and what the complaints were on Monday?
Well, first of all, with respect to what we were discussing on Monday, we could actually discuss concrete things. We could, if there were a specific instance where there was an unmasking that we were concerned about, we could ask the questions about it. here we have no information about who was masked or who was unmasked, and indeed, based on what the chairman told me, the names were masked, apart from a single name which wasn't necessarily anyone connected with the Trump organization. The concern the chair raised with me was that the names that were masked he believed were associated with the president or his associates.
But did he unmask the president today in this?
I don't know. Again, this is the problem. This is the precise problem when the information is not shared with the committee itself. We will be seeking this information. We will be evaluating it, and once we've had a chance to review it, I will issue a statement about what I think it says and what I think it doesn't say. But here we're operating on hearsay, and this is simply not a way to conduct an investigation. Yes.
On that point, had the committee been previously briefed about the intercepts in general, or had you had any background knowledge about these intercepts? You say you don't have these intercepts, but were you aware of these intercepts? Do members of the committee have information about them?
Well, it's impossible to know because we don't know what intercepts the chairman is referring to. So, again, my assumption from what the chair said is that these are intercepts that we don't have. But he also said this doesn't relate to the Russia investigation. So if it doesn't relate to the Russia investigation, if they were lawfully conducted, and he said there's no reason to believe they weren't, then we wouldn't have them as a part of the investigation. Now, we have made a request of the intelligence agencies for information about their masking procedures. If indeed it's within the scope of our request, then it's information we should be getting. For information about their masking procedures. If indeed it's within the scope of our request, then it's information we should be getting. And if that's true, and I think the chairman indicated he thought that the information he'd received is within the scope of what we've asked for, then it's a significant question that if this is within the information we've asked for that the agencies are going to be delivering to us later this week, then why make this statement to the press before we have it? It just begs more questions, frankly, than it answers. Yes.
Is there any reason to believe, I know we discussed briefly the president, but just to kind of clarify, is there any reason to believe that the president or members of his family were people present in these documents?
Again, you would have to ask the chairman because he's the only one on the committee that I'm aware of that's been able to see this.
Did he express that to you? Did he say, I think these people are involved?
I don't want to characterize precisely what the chair said, and I think if you look at what he has said publicly, it's not very clear because he has used words like may have been or it might be, and how can we evaluate the strength of that information? We just can't. And again, this just underscores why this is not how you conduct an investigation. You don't take information that the committee hasn't seen and present it orally to the press and to the White House before the committee has a chance to vet whether it's even significant.
What assurances did you receive from Chairman Nunes that the committee can move forward in a bipartisan way?
I'm sorry?
What assurances did you receive from Chairman Nunes that the committee can move forward in a bipartisan way?
Well, I have to say I expressed my grave concerns about how this was handled, and I'm not sure that at this point we're likely to get those kind of assurances. Certainly we're going to have a much more lengthy discussion of this when we meet as a committee. But it casts quite a profound cloud over our ability to do our work. And I do think that the concern over Russian intervention in our election is one that permeates the Congress, and it's a concern that Democrats have, and it's a concern that Republicans have. And I have to think that most of the members of the House want a bipartisan investigation to be done. But this is not the way to do it. Yes.
Did Chairman Nunes tell you how or where or in what way he viewed these documents or was alerted to their existence? And also, you've said that you're gravely concerned and you've criticized the chairman right now, but are you pursuing any sort of more formal censuring of him in light of what happened?
This is not a situation, I think, where you can pursue something like that. we still have a very important job to do even apart from this investigation. But right now the country is counting on us because in the House of Representatives, we're the only investigation there is. If we don't do it, no one is going to do it. Now, perhaps the White House would like it that way. But the American people, I think, want there to be a credible investigation. And if we're not going to conduct it, then we need to have an independent commission do it. And if the chairman is going to continue to go to the White House rather than his own committee, there's no way we can conduct this investigation.
And did he tell you how or where, or what led to him being able to do these documents?
I don't have a lot of details on it. The most I think he was able to say is that it was shared with him alone, so it doesn't appear to have been shared even with the other Republican members of his committee. And so all of us are in the dark. And that makes what the chairman did today all the more extraordinary. Yeah.
Do you have any concerns about the way in which he got this information or who it might have come from? He said he doesn't have the documents in his possession, but he knows where they are.
Well, obviously there are a lot of questions. I mean, if this came from people within the intelligence community, then you're looking at sort of a channel for a leak to the press, which raises a whole other category of concerns. If this is within the intelligence community, it ought to be shared with us by the intelligence community. I don't know if that's the source of it.
He said he also went and called the NSA, the CIA, and I think the FBI.
You'd have to ask the chairman. Again, we have no idea where these documents came from, whether they even show what they purport to show. But even if they do on the basis of what the chairman said, the underlying fact is still the same. There's no evidence to support the president's contention that he was wiretapped by his predecessor. The underlying fact is still the same. There's no evidence to support the president's contention that he was wiretapped by his predecessor. So I'm not sure what the point of this extraordinary process is, and I have to hope that this is not part of a broader campaign by the White House aimed to deflect from the director's testimony earlier this week. But again, not having seen the documents, not having the chairman share those documents with either Democrats or Republicans on the committee, there's simply no way for us to evaluate.
Do you have any idea of how many names were in here, masked or unmasked?
I have no idea.
Dozens?
There's no way for us to know. Yeah.
It seems like that the decision about an independent commission is in the hands of Paul Ryan. Have you talked to him about that, and do you have any plans to do so, if not?
I certainly intend to do so. The request has been made by our minority leader, as well as the entire membership of the Democratic membership of the House of Representatives in the form of sponsorship of legislation by my colleague Eric Swalwell and Elijah Cummings. So we have certainly made it clear now for many weeks that we ought to follow the model we did after 9/11, where we do an investigation through our intelligence committees, but we also have a truly independent commission. And there are two reasons why I think the commission now is more essential than ever. The first is that a commission would have a dedicated staff and resources focused solely on this issue, and an investigation of this magnitude really justifies that kind of investment. But second, it takes it completely out of the political realm. And today's events show why that is just so essential. A commission like the 9/11 Commission wouldn't have one of its chairs go to the White House when it obtained new information. And we just cannot continue along that kind of a path. So I think more than anything else, today's events have underscored the imperative of an independent commission.
Did he tell you?
Yes.
Did the chairman give you any indication why he decided to go to the White House before he came to you with any information?
No, and that's a good question for the chairman. I certainly did express my concern that that is simply not a way to conduct a credible investigation. Thank you.
What did he say to you in response to that? Did he tell you when you'll get to see that?